I'm really very happy to be the part of this program, and today is the fourth session, I think, and it's the last one. And and of course, it happens to be during the Sagadawa, the holy month, and of course, we all have. It has been a great time for all of us, and I'm really very happy to be the part of it. And today, I wanted to start with a very beautiful quotations, citations that usually the comes in the Chinese traditions of reciting Heart Sutra. And at the end of the conclusion of the Heart Sutra, there is this beautiful quotations where the line says, "May I be able to dispel all three poisons. May the light of wisdom shine in all directions. May all obstacles be cleared, and may I be able to engage in the activities of Bodhisattvas." And as we all know that as a Buddhist, um, the one thing common with all the Buddhists is the recitation of Heart Sutra when it comes to the Mahayana Buddhists all over the world. So be it the Mongolians, Chinese, Japanese, or Tibetan traditions. So Heart Sutra really forms the core of Lord Buddha's teachings, and it's really a very important teaching. And the essence of the Heart Sutra seems to be the essence of the 84,000 teachings of Lord Buddha. And again, the very essence of the Heart Sutra itself is the emptiness, the teaching on emptiness. And usually when we debate in our topics, sometimes we count about the scriptures, depending upon the number of the lines and the pages. So that's why in the Tibetan traditions, these scriptures are called 100,000 verses, 8,000 verses, 12,000 verses, depending upon the number of the verses that are within the text. So that's why the name is given. And Heart Sutra has 25 verses. And again, when you summarize the Heart Sutra, it comes down to one single syllable, so which is the shortest teaching of Lord Buddha. And it is the syllable A. So A actually symbolize the emptiness, the teaching on emptiness. So this gives us a very important message that all the teachings of the Lord Buddha, when it comes to the essence, is actually the teaching on emptiness. And therefore, I'm very happy to be the part of discussion on emptiness for the last few sessions. And this, as this prayer says, so when it comes to our own personal practice, so teachings of the Lord Buddha were not to show your expertise in the field of knowledge. It's not about gaining wisdom so that you know everything. It's not about taming other people's mind. It's all about your own practice, how to make yourself a better person, to make yourself a better human being. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to dispel or eliminate the three poisons which are actually staying within us that really harms us, that really makes us sad and suffering all the time. So that's why the first line says, may I be able to dispel these three poisons. Then in order to do that, how can you get rid of the poisons, the destructive emotions that you have? So it is not like, it cannot be get rid of through surgeries. The Lord Buddha cannot come as a magician or in a mystical way and get rid of your suffering. So there is no other way than just following the teachings of the Buddha and your own practice. That's the reason why the second line says, may the light of wisdom shine. So the wisdom becomes very important here. And the wisdom is again referring mainly to the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And so in order to do that, and when it comes to our own individual cases, there are so many obstacles that we have in our life. Every individuals have different kind of obstacles that takes away most of our time. And as we discussed before about different categories of laziness And one category of laziness that we all have in common is the laziness pertaining to procrastinations. When we always procrastinate the things that you can do today, you think that you will do tomorrow, and so on. And similarly, to take up to use all your time in unmeaningful things that you do in your life, which are really not your purpose. So therefore, the third line says, may all these obstacles be clear so that you have all the conditions to practice. And once you have all this in place, then what you are going to do, is it just to stay happy, just to stay relaxed in a good place? That's not the thing. So the fourth line says, may I be able to engage in the activities of Bodhisattvas. So the activities of the Bodhisattvas are actually the teaching on compassion and teaching on compassion to benefit other sentient beings. So that has to be our purpose. So I find this 4 lines very inspiring and very beautiful. And I think that's the perfect way to start our 4th session today. And as we say that, I also wanted to remind you about one of the Kadamba masters saying that sometimes even someone like me who call myself a Buddhist monk, who have studied the Buddhist philosophy for over 20 years, and then all of us who calls ourselves sometimes a practitioners, or I'm doing something beneficial. So the Kadamba master says that if you do not generate compassion and the wisdom realizing emptiness, and without these two qualities, without their presence within you, and you may spend years and years in the meditative state, reciting mantras, hundreds and billions of mantras, but your purpose has to be to get rid of the destructive emotions. But in reality, with you training the beats all the time, your nails may go away. So Nyamoma Sistemosi in Tibetan, which says that in the place of the destructive emotions to go away, but your nails may go away. So this is a very beautiful teaching again to tell us about what is really the practice. So sometimes if we do not really check ourselves, what we are really doing, what our mind is really up to, many a times when we call ourselves that we are doing some kind of practice, we're doing something good, may not be really a practice of Dharma. So therefore, another Kadamba tradition, there's a story which says that the master says that I will be very happy if you practice a real teaching, real Dharma. So the student thought that it may be doing the circumambulations around the stupas. So he did a lot of circumambulations, and then he went to his master and I asked, I did the real practice. He said, okay, going around the stupa is very precious, but if you practice a real Dharma, that is even better. So then he thought it may be doing some recitations, it may be doing some prostrations, it may be doing some chantings, or it may be doing, he did all sort of other things. So ultimately the master says that the real, in every actions that we do, what makes those actions lack real practice is not to meditate about the impermanence nature of the things. So that is really lacking. And the Kadamba masters even say that if you do not generate the impermanent, meditate on the impermanence nature, then you are not a practitioner. So this line is very beautiful. And sometimes even within our monastic systems also, we debate that the Buddhist teachings, a lot of Buddhist teachings always speaks about the suffering, always speaks about the negative things, and it's emphasized too much on those things, and that really sometimes discourages us. So, but that's not the reality thing. When we speak about impermanence, I think that as we discussed before, there's 2 categories of impermanence. Of course, one is about our death and dying process. That is a different case. But generally, when we speak about impermanence, when something is impermanent, that means that there is an opportunity for that thing to change. there is a possibility to change. And when something can change from one state to another, it is really a hope for all of us. That present, for example, whatever the situation that we are in now, when we know that it is impermanent, then if we make some effort, the changes can come to us. So this is really inspiring. Otherwise, whatever effort that you made, and if it really doesn't change, or if it really doesn't make any difference in your mind, then it's a waste of time. So therefore, I think that when we meditate on impermanence teachings, that is one essence that we can take and put it in our own practice. So, so with these intentions, so today's, I wish that we all pray that today's our. Okay, thank you. Sorry, there was a technical problem. I think it was my internet that suddenly went, and I'm sorry for that. So coming back to our main point, so today, to start these sessions, we all will shift our motivation to make sure that we will work towards bring some change in our own practice. So that is the most important thing. And with that, so the topic for our today's discussion is the wisdom realizing emptiness, and especially the emptiness as being explained through the highest Madhyamika school. In the last few sessions, we discussed on the various aspects of emptiness that is being taught by the lower philosophical tenets and the schools, and their interpretations of the emptiness. Especially in the last session, we talk about how the mind-only schools, a way of explaining the emptiness, especially about the mind and the object and their relationships. So today, when it comes to the Madhyamika schools, the highest philosophical tenets in Buddhist studies, so the first thing that they pay the importance is, when it comes to the understanding of the emptiness, is to identify the object of negations. So again, as I mentioned before, so when we went to understand emptiness, so it has to be always understood by negating something. So when you negate something, negate the object, which is not the reality, so then through that, you gain the wisdom that understands the emptiness. So therefore, then what is the object of negations? So therefore, first, it's very important to identify that nature. For example, if a physician has to prescribe a medicine to a patient for a certain illness, it is very important for the physician to first understand what that illness is. So without understanding the nature of that illness or the disease, it is very inappropriate for a physician to prescribe any medications. So similarly, first we have to understand the object to be negated in understanding the emptiness. And the Shantideva, one of the greatest masters who's teaching on emptiness, says that without contacting the entity that is imputed, you will not apprehend the absence of that entity. So what it says is that in order to understand the emptiness from a positive side, we have to know the object that is to be negated. So I'm going to make this more clear. So when it comes to the object that has to be negated, so different philosophical schools came up with different views. So the practitioners or the philosophical masters told that when you meditate on emptiness, so when you meditate on emptiness, you meditate on the very special existence of all the phenomena or the persons, where there is not even a single inherent existence, nature, presence in those things. So that's what we discussed before. So yogis and meditators, for the beginners, especially when we started to meditate on emptiness, many people mistake the notion of emptiness to notion of nothingness or absolutely stopping everything from your mind. So if you fall into that side, then your object of negation is actually becoming too wide. That when you meditate on emptiness, you are actually blocking everything out. So which is not the reality, which is something against reality. For example, as we discussed before, I think in our first sessions about the meditation on shamatha, the karma abiding meditations, that in the 8th century, the great Indian Nalanda master Shantarakshita was invited to Tibet. I told you that story. And one of the main purpose for inviting that master to Tibet was to refute or defeat the wrong notions about meditations that were prevalent in Tibet at that time. And the wrong understanding or notion of meditation that were prevalent in Tibet at that time was the notion of meditation by the Hashang, the Chinese meditators, and who believe that when you sit in meditative postures, you should be able to block all the thoughts, stop any kind of thoughts coming into your mind. So when you're able to stop all the thoughts from entering your mind, then your mind becomes completely blank. And when your mind becomes completely blank, there is nothing to disturb your mind. And so that's what they thought is the real meditation. But what happens is when you stopped all the thoughts from entering your mind and stay in a total thoughtless state of mind, your mind may be in a quite calm state, but it is not in any potential. It is not in a state to do any activities. It is not an activity to any investigations or experiments, to do any analysis. So because it lacks the capacity to do those things, because it's empty of any thoughts. So that's why the Shantarakshita and the masters argue with those Chinese masters, and they said that if a state of mind which is free of any thought is said to be the real meditation, then when we are in deep sleep, so when you really fall into a deep sleep for hours, then that has to be the best meditation for us. But that's not the case with all of us. We all experience, we all go into deep sleep for many hours every day, but that doesn't really make us a better person the next morning. We are the same person again. So that shows very clearly that just blocking every thoughts from entering your mind doesn't really make you a better person or better, make your mind more intelligent and sharper. Because the real meditation that Shantarakshita says is that when you are first stay in a meditative state, what your mind actually does is to prepare for post-meditations. When you sit in a very good postures, in a very comfortable place, and with all the facilities, it's very good for you to think about the good things, compassions and patience and all these things. But as soon as you walk out of that state into the real world, and when you are confronted with all these unwanted things that makes you, that make you angry and so on, at that time, your mind has to be ready to face those in a positive way. So that is the role of meditations. So that's why when we are in the meditative state, we cannot block all the thoughts. We have to be selective. We have to be selective which thoughts are to be blocked, to be stopped, and which are to be let coming in. So that's all about meditation, that our investigative nature, selecting nature of the mind should be at this highest peak of intelligence. So that's the real meaning of meditations. So similarly, the reason why I took this metaphor here is that even when it comes to understanding emptiness, when you say, the understanding of emptiness, actually, if it brings to your mind that nothing exists, then is not the right understanding. So you're falling on one side. So therefore, ultimately, the middle way schools system tells us that we are not refuting or we are not negating the mere simple existence of everything. Of course, in this universe, everything exists. So we are not, when we say no self or selflessness or emptiness, we are not refuting the existence of the things from this world. But we are refuting the inherent existence. So they draw a difference between existence, mere simple existence of all the things, and inherent existence. So that's the middle school's standpoint just stays in the middle. They neither refutes the simple existence nature of the thing, nor exaggerated its existence, or nor state that it exists in inherent existence. So these terminologies may sound a little bit difficult, but that's what the middle way schools tells us, that they do not fall into any side. They stay in the middle, which is the real nature of everything. Because if you say that things do not exist, but that is against the nature of the things. So when you go against the nature of the things, then problems started to come. And if you say that though things only exist in a mere designations way, but if you exaggerated their existence to another level, then that creates another problems. So therefore, to stay in the middle is all about understanding the middle way philosophy or emptiness. So as we discussed in the last sessions about two truths, the conventional truth and ultimate truth. And here, the middle way philosophy's understanding of the ultimate truth and the conventional truth is things appearing as inherent existence, having its absolute existence, is the conventional way of understanding those things as they appear to us. But reality is something different. So it is so important. So this actually tells us why we have to understand emptiness, why the wisdom realizing emptiness becomes a very important part, not just for a philosophical debate, but for our own practice in a daily life. Because when you know that, when you know the difference between mere existence of an object and its superficial or the exaggerated understanding, exaggerated mode of existence, when you know that these two difference, we actually know the difference, we actually reduced or actually eliminate the gap between reality and the exaggerated way of looking at things. So when we are able to reduce the gap between the reality and the appearance of the things, then we know that we are much, much closer to understand the nature of the things. When that happens, for example, usually we say that problems that we humans faced in our day-to-day life, for example, stress, depressions. So stress and depressions is actually definitely because not understanding, not able to differentiate between what is reality and what is the exaggerated reality that you think it is. Because the gap between your reality and your perceivance or the appearance of that is too wide that you think that it may be something else, but in reality, it was something different. So that's why it is very important that understanding of emptiness becomes very relevant in our day-to-day life. And another way to look at the understanding that reality of the thing is when we are much, much closer, when we have some understanding about emptiness in this way, automatically the destructive emotions, the negative emotions that we have decrease by themselves. Because all these negative thoughts, destructive emotions like anger, hatred, and jealousy, they are not based on the reality of the things. They are actually based on some superficial or exaggerated understanding of nature, which is not the reality. So when the reality shows its face to us. And when we are much closer to the reality of the things that are before us, then those emotions that are based on mere appearance or the fake appearance of a nature do not have any place in us. So that becomes another important in our life, in our day-to-day lives practice, to meditate on emptiness, to make sure that our understanding of emptiness becomes as close to the perfect understanding of emptiness as possible, so that it brings an impact directly to your day-to-day lives, way of dealing with the things, dealing with your friends, dealing with situations, when you are faced with the difficult situations, when you confront with unwanted situations, how you can face it, how you can challenge or face them in a positive way. I think that becomes very important. Because I think we discussed this point before, and this is one point that His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, that all the negative emotions are actually derived or originated through the exaggerated meditations that actually goes before arising these negative emotions. For example, as I mentioned before, for an anger to arise, before the arising of the actual anger, another thought precedes that emotions, which actually checks about the identity of that person, who that person is, and what action does he does, and why you do not like that person. So many reasons, fake reasons, that circulates in your mind and make you get more anger towards that person. So those thoughts are actually based on falsity nature of the things, which are not reality, which are against the emptiness. So therefore, it becomes very important for us to understand emptiness in this way. So the highest Madhyamika philosophical system says that if this is the case, then how can we develop that understanding gradually? Is there a simple method to do that? And Nagarjuna's especially philosophical system says that there are many, many reasons, many, many logical reasons that can actually prove that things are empty of its own inherent existence. But among all the different reasons, the supreme one, the most effective one, is the reason based on dependent arising. So in the text, if I tell you in a very philosophical way, the text says that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence because they are dependently arising. So dependently arising here, we take it as a reason to prove that things are empty of inherent existence, okay? So if this is the ultimate source or the reason that then they use, then what does we meant by dependent arising? So in the next step here, it becomes very important for us to know what does dependent arising, what is the relation between dependent arising and emptiness. So to understand that, I think first we have to know again how the dependent arising is understood in the different levels by, again, the different philosophical schools, philosophical schools. So the first level of understanding of dependent arising is dependent arising pertaining to cause and result. So cause and result, something like a seed and a sprout or a plant, or fire and the smoke, because the seed, due to the seed, a plant comes. So plant here is the result and seed is the cause. So the dependent understanding between them is actually what I call monodependence. So monodependence is actually one-way dependence. One-way dependence is for the plant to grow, the plant actually depends on the seed. That is one-way dependence. But the seed doesn't rely on its existence to the plant. I think you all can get this point. Because if you look at the order of these two things, origination, the seed comes first and the plant comes later, right? So therefore, seed exists much earlier, and its existence doesn't depend on the plant because it comes much later. So, but for a plant to arise, to grow, it has to depend on a seed. Because without the presence of a seed, it is impossible for the plant to come. So therefore, this is understanding of dependent arising on the first level. That is the first level. And this is again what I call monodependence. The second thing is understanding of dependent arising pertaining to parts and whole. So the parts and whole, if I tell you an example, I think this is pretty easy to understand. For example, if I show you here, this is my mala, my rosary, and we all agree that this is a mala that I have here. So, but part and whole, what it says is that mala is actually a whole object by itself. And it is made up of so many different small parts together. Like I have here 111 beads. So 111 beads, just one of these, even one bead of this mala actually plays a very important role in formation of this whole mala. And again, then there's this string, then there is this, the notes, and even the colors, and all these small parts together actually forms the whole object. So they are dependent on each other. Again, this one, the dependent is monodependence, what I call one-way dependence, because the parts for the whole object to become, to form the whole object, it depends on this individual parts. But this individual parts doesn't rely its existence on the whole object. So I hope you got that point. So that's the second understanding of dependent arising, which is a little bit much more, which is a little bit higher compared to the first one, which is the cause and result. Now the third one, it speaks about dependent arising pertaining to mere designations. So let me clarify this to you. What the highest mathematical school says is that it is true that there is a dependent relation between the cause and result. It is true that there is a dependent relation between the parts and the whole. But your understanding of that dependent arising is still incomplete because your dependent explanation only tells us a monodependence. For example, the result, which is the plant, relies on the seed, but the seed doesn't depend towards the plant. So it's actually one-way dependence. It is not omnidependence. It's not both-way dependent. So Nagarjuna's system says that dependent arising has to be both ways dependence. Both way has to rely on each other. And I wanted to tell you a simple story here. So when I go to school, one of my favorite comic books that actually at that time we can get access to is an Indian comic called Tinkle. Maybe none of you might have heard that. It's an Indian comic. And there are beautiful small short stories in that Tinkle. And one of the characters is called a young kid called Raju. And his jokes were actually very short jokes, one-line jokes or something. And the teacher asked him in his class, and how old are you? And he said, I'm 7 years old. And then teacher again asked him in front of all the students, how old is your father? He replied, 7 years old. Teacher gets furious. How come it's possible that you are 7 years old and your father is also 7 years old? And the kid replies that he became father when I was born. So I think this is really what the Nagarjuna was trying to say for all these years. Because earlier understanding of dependent arising was that the father came earlier than the child. So they say that child's existence actually depends on the existence of his father. But father doesn't rely on the child because the father came much earlier. He's much older compared to the kid. But now through the way the kid replied and the Nagarjuna's philosophical systems tells us that though he exists before, but for him to become a father, he became a father in relation to his children. Nobody can become a parent without any relation or dependence upon their children. So if you look at the relationship between the parent and the children, is actually both ways, double ways, both ways relationship. Similarly, if you look at the relationship between cause and result, the highest Madhyamika school says that because there is a result, there is a cause. So the mere existence of a cause actually depends on the existence of a result. So without the result, there can never be a cause, or it cannot be a cause. Because if something has to be a cause of a result, then without the existence of a result, it cannot be determined as a cause. So let me give you an example. For example, one of the points that we use in our debate all the time is the fire and the smoke. The fire as the cause and the smoke as the result. Because there is a fire, a smoke comes, right? So one way to look at the Tibetan is fire comes first, smoke later. So the existence of a smoke definitely relies on the existence of a fire, but fire doesn't rely on smoke because there is a difference in their order, origination order. But Nagarjuna's system says that how does the fire becomes the cause of the smoke? Because it produces smoke. So the existence of a fire becoming a cause relies on the smoke. Without the smoke, it cannot be a cause. So when dependent arising is explained in this way, then it is what we call the multi-direction dependence. So that is what the Nagarjuna systems tells about the dependent arising. So in this way, they say that because there is an object, there is an observer. Because there is an observer, there is an object. So they both exist at the same time, similar to what the mind-only school says before. And action and agent, when there is a person performing an action, so the person is described based on that action. So that action, again, is described based on the one who performs that action. So they both exist at the same time, and it's interdependence. So that is the dependent arising. So again, what does it really signify? So did it make a difference in our day-to-day life? It actually gives us a very important message that in our day-to-day life, we tend to feel that we do not depend on other people as much as we really in reality. In reality, we are dependent on another person's, other sentient beings for everything that we do. Maybe in 2020, due to the COVID-19, we realized that something that happens in the east part of the world actually has a very strong impact in the Western countries. Something that happens to your neighborhood makes a difference to your life, which we never realized before. So it gives us a very important lesson that every action that you do today, though you feel that it's very personal, actually bears a very important result that could impact other people also. So that is one way to understand the interdependence with everything that you do, with everyone in this world. So that is how the Nagarjuna system understood the interdependence. So they said that since everything is interdependence, then there is, how can there be an absolute existence? So absolute or inherent actually means independent, that do not rely on something else or someone else's existence. So it actually refutes the existence of an independent state of things. Then again, so the highest mathematical philosophical system use the reasoning of interdependent or dependent arising as a reason to prove that everything is being empty of inherent existence. So that is understanding of emptiness coming from the highest mathematical philosophical system. Now, when I say interdependence and mere designation, sometimes this is really difficult to digest and also difficult to understand. How can things be mere designated? How can things be mere nominal when they make a difference in our life, when they make very important changes in our life? And one example that I give before to all of you is that there is a fake snake, which is the plastic snake, and a real snake. Both of them looks very similar, but one is a snake, one is not a snake. So how come that if it is mere designations, mere nominal, then you can both call both the objects snake, but one performs the activities or the functions of a snake, but the other do not. So there is some truth from the objective side also. So that is what we can look. So here, I wanted to tell you another example regarding this mala. What if I asked you, all of you, whether this is my mala, and I'm sure that every one of you will agree that this is the mala, right? So as you all agree that this is the mala, except for the highest mathematical school, which is the Nagarjuna system, all other schools say that this is mala. Okay, but Nagarjuna systems, the highest mathematical school, go one step further and say, this is not mala. The thing that you see here is not mala. It sounds really strange in some way that, of course, this is mala. Everyone in the world knows that this is mala. Then how come that you disagree with us? But what Nagarjuna system says that this is actually the basis for the term mala, because the mala is actually a concept. Mala is actually a concept, a nominal concept that we have in our mind, that we develop in our mind. And that terminology, that concept was actually implied or imputed on this object. The one that you actually see is actually the basis of that name, the basis of that name. And I think I told you before that when a child is born, I think it's same traditions with Western cultures and everywhere. For example, in Tibetan traditions, we do not name the child immediately after he or she is born. We wait for a good day or an auspicious time, and then we bring our child to some high lamas to get a name. So, for example, someone is born today, and then he was given a name after 2 days. Then he was given a name of Tenzin, for example. So after that day, whenever people see that child, they call him Tenzin. They know him by Tenzin. But in reality, as soon as that child was born, he doesn't born with the character. He doesn't born with the name Tenzin. Tenzin was a name that was given to him later by someone. And then it became popular. It became a known, well-known name to all the people. Everyone started calling him Tenzin, and then he became Tenzin after that. So similarly to that, Nagarjuna says that everything in this world is merely a concept that we have in our mind. And that concept is actually based or given, the name is given on an object. And this is the basis of that object. And basis of a name, and a name has to be always different. And that is what the highest mathematical philosophical system says, and I don't know whether this explanation may make any sense to you. And if it doesn't make sense, I think it's okay, completely fine. Because this explanation doesn't make sense to many great scholars also in Tibet for over 100 years. And even Lama Tsongkhapa, who is one of the greatest scholars and who wrote on emptiness, was really struggling to explain this concept to other people. And he says that even though this may not make any sense to you, but still you have to say that this is the real understanding of emptiness and just follow that without, even though you may not develop that level of understanding. So if that is another point that I wanted to add here finally is that, as I said before, if this object has been known by another name, okay, before this is called mala, if it is called by another name, maybe today we know this object by another name. But then, as I said before, then why we can't call a fake snake a snake? Why, if it is merely a designation, if it is merely a name, then we can call anything by any names. We can know anything by any concept, if it is a merely concept. So then they laid out one rules and say that, no, that is not possible. Though things are merely nominal and merely designations, but it doesn't mean that you can name anything by any way. They said that it should not be refuted. It should not be negated by another understanding, which is against this concept. For example, what I'm trying to say is that if I call this a book, because this is a mala, so the term mala has been designated on this particular object. But then if I call this book, so then it says that this is against the rule number 1, which says that this object is not known to everyone in the world by the name of book. Book is already another object. Okay, so they said that that's why you cannot, when we say that everything is by mere designation, it doesn't really mean that you can call any object by any names. That is not the right way to understand that. So I think we have covered few topics, and I don't want to go much deeper. And I think that may be quite confusing sometimes. Even I get confused about what I'm talking here. And so I wanted to summarize that in the last few sessions, we discussed about different levels of emptiness. And I think I said that one way to understand the emptiness is through meditating about your own self, finding the nature of self. And when people were asked to identify their self, they come up with different answers. Some people point to their physical body as their representations of the self. Some point to their consciousness as the representation of self. Even different Buddhist philosophical systems had a very hard time to identify their real self. And Nagarjuna system says that the habit of people, because in this world, we are by naturally, we have this habit to, when you're asked to identify something, when you're asked to find something, you feel that if something exists, then it has to be found when it is deeply investigated, is identity, okay? So that is one shortcoming that we have. But Nagarjuna says that it is completely wrong. Everything exists on one level, a nominal level, but if you are to identify and find the essence of that things by further investigating, you cannot find it. It doesn't exist to that deep level. It only exists on a nominal level. So therefore, you have to be satisfied that self just exists. Self is a mere designation that is given to the collection of the body that you have, or the collection of the mind, the mental processes, and your feelings, your body combined together. Your self is designated upon that object. But if you are not satisfied with that, and if you go a step further and try to again look deeper where that self really resides, whether it resides in your hands or whether it resides in your finger, whether it resides in your soul, then you cannot find it. Then you will become hopeless. So Nagarjuna says that that is actually one shortcoming that we humans have, that try to always find when some things are searched or looked upon. He said that it's not necessary, that when you find deeper, things do not need to be found in that way. And his system says that things exist only on a nominal level, but not beyond that. Because that really helps in our day-to-day life, way of living. Because if we get a little bit of that understanding, our over-attachment towards things will definitely decrease. Because we think that we are not satisfied with the real state of existence of those things. And we think that they may have something much deeper existence than what those things really appear to us. So therefore, we get over-attached to those things. And when you are over-attached to things, what attachment does? Attachment actually binds you into a jail or what should I say, a metal box. It doesn't let you go anywhere. So attachment actually takes away all your freedom to relax and to be happy. So therefore, I think that Nagarjuna's explanation about finding self is really inspiring, and it's really something that could make some difference in our day-to-day life. So that is what we discussed before, and then once we get to understand about nature of reality based on our own self, then it's very easy to copy paste that experience to all other things in this world, because then you don't have to meditate, you don't have to work hard to each and every object. So that's the good thing about the computers, that you can do copy paste. Similarly, once you gain a good understanding based on one thing, then you can copy paste that understanding to everything in this world. So that's one beautiful thing. So therefore, always when you start meditating and practice, it's always better to do it on yourself, because that really gives you a better reason to do it, a better purpose to do it. And if we look at all the great studies and the researches that we do in this world in different universities, most of the time it's always about something about outside world. And our physical body is also placed in such a way that two eyes are always looking outside, and it's never looking inside. So there is very little time and opportunity for us to really check what's actually going on in our mind and the thoughts. There's very little opportunity for us. Even mobile phones, selfie cameras we introduce much late, is always about the other camera which look at the outside world rather than your inner world. So therefore, meditations on emptiness and meditations on selflessness and impermanence, I think it's all about focusing more on our inner world, what actually goes in our mind. And I wanted to end with saying that why the emptiness becomes important, understand emptiness becomes important, is that as the first line says that, may I be able to dispel the three poisons. So these poisonous thoughts that we have in our mind can be dispelled or eliminated only by understanding emptiness. There is no other way. than that. Because once we get a step closer to understand reality, these emotions are not based on reality, as I said before. So the more your mental state resides or focus towards the reality of the things, the lesser the opportunity for these thoughts to stay in your mind. They won't be able to occupy much of your space in your mind. They have to go away. There is no space for them to, there is no opportunity for them to stay in your mind. So therefore, I think meditating on emptiness is very important. And I think almost we have used 1 hour till here, and we will have a short break here for 10 minutes, tea break. And after that, we will have some Q&A sessions and then conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Rinpoche, we had some discussions here.
Okay.
And the question is, because we have chocolate. So according to Nagarjuna, if we say we ate chocolate, is it not correct? Because we should say we ate something that works as a base to be called as chocolate.
Yeah, when you eat the basis of chocolate, you actually eat the chocolate. You cannot take the chocolate out of its base.
It's complicated.
Yeah, a little bit complicated, because in conventional world, when you eat the basis of chocolate, you are understood to be eating chocolate. So whatever the conventional world says, Nagarjuna system follows that. So that's their explanation. But it's good to debate on emptiness by eating chocolate. That's the best.
It's a pleasant way of debating about emptiness.
Yes.
So welcome back, everyone. So shall we open the floor for questions then? If you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions. We don't have so many participants now. We have a question here, actually, at the center. Hanna.
Yes, thank you. You said earlier that the fire is not the cause of smoke without the smoke, if I understood you correctly.
Yes.
But is it the same with the seed and the plant?
Yes.
It is the same, because the seed must come from a plant to become a seed.
No, that's not the logic behind it.
Okay, could you please?
Yeah, that's not the. Yes. When we say that fire is generally the cause and the smoke is the result. So the cause comes first and the result comes later. So their relation between the connection is actually one-way connection, which is the smoke actually relies on the existence of a fire for its existence. But Nagarjuna system, what it says is that for the smoke, for the fire to be the cause of smoke. So if there is no smoke, then how can you say that fire is the cause of smoke? Because without in relation to smoke. So that's what he says, that is one way that we can find some relationship between the cause and the result. There is no relation, as we understood earlier, that one comes first and one comes later. So the mere existence of the first thing actually doesn't depend on the secondary things. But for the fire to be the cause of smoke, so when you say the fire is the cause of smoke, so the term smoke you used, and the smoke has a role to play there. So that's why they say the smoke, fire dependent on smoke. And the case is same with seed and plant. And when we say that seed is the cause of plant, and also seed depend on plant for its identity. it doesn't, this doesn't actually mean that seed actually comes from another plant. That's not the case. We are actually referring to the very, what should I say, normal understanding of seed as a cause that give rise to a plant when you sow it in the soil. So here it says that for the seed, but again, it's the same explanation. When you say that this particular seed is the seed of that plant, if you give a name, for example, the corn seed is the seed of corn. So corn, when you refer to something as a corn seed, so the corn is the result, right? It's actually the crop. Or if you say this is a sunflower seed, so sunflower is actually the product. And so when you describe, when you understood the seed by the name sunflower seed, so merely understanding the identity of seed as a sunflower seed, actually the sunflower has to play some role in understanding that the seed is actually seed can be understood as a sunflower seed. So therefore, at the time of sunflower seed, there is no sunflower. It's yet to come, of course. But without any relation to sunflower, you cannot refer to something as a sunflower seed, right? So that's what I meant. I hope that makes some sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rinpoche,
Yes.
based on the explanation you just provided now, so that's a relationship relates to the labeling of the two objects. So in a way, one independence on the other one, because otherwise if it's only seed, but seed of what? So it needs to you also use the result for its own labeling. And in that respect, they are not, one doesn't come before the other one, but on the label, because if we were to look at, you know, like a plant is not going to exist without having first a seed. So wouldn't there be a difference in how it relates? So Nagarjuna's explanation relating to the labeling of things, but there is a cause and effect. We see all around us in the natural world, and everything is driven by cause and effect. You understand what I'm getting at?
I think so.
That
Yeah, maybe.
labeling, because otherwise, if both arise together, it couldn't really be cause and effect.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
if the labeling of both arise together, but still on the I don't know, base or whatever the term, there is still a cause and effect, but not on the denomination. Is that the name? Denomination, designation.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That's really, really a very tough question. There's a question really to be put up on the debate floor. But I wanted to make one thing clear here. When we say that the identity of a seed, for example, take the example of a sunflower seed. So if at the time of the seed, sunflower seed, the sunflower is yet to come. Objectively, sunflower is yet to come. So even though sunflower is yet to come, you can still call the seed sunflower seed. That's a fact that we all agree, okay? So what Nagarjuna says is that though these two things exist alternately, one after the another, but the existence of both of these has to be understood in relation to each other. So when Nagarjuna says that this has to be understood in relation to each other, he actually doesn't say that their labelly they have to exist together. That's not what he meant. So objectively they arise one after the another. In reality also they exist one after the another. But to understand the cause, we have to understand a part of the role of the result. Without understanding the role of the result, there is no way that you can understand the role of the cause. So that's what he meant. I think is that your questions, I think?
Yes, yeah, to me it makes sense. And I'll just wait to see if anyone else has other questions. Otherwise, I have another question, but I'll just wait, not to be greedy.
Okay.
Thank you, Amelia. Do you have any more questions?
I want to ask something, yeah. Oh, is it on?
I have a question.
Maybe a double.
I can wait.
Annie, here at the Gopal, we have a question from Anila, so your turn will be next.
Rinpoche, when I have looked in books about debate, there is something called tetralemma. Does that English word mean anything to you? If it does, can you please explain? Because this tetralemma is I think 4 lines. It's certain structure, how you go through different question and answer, and it's something I guess basic if you want to learn debate, this 4-line tetralemma. Can you please explain?
Thank you, Anila. I think I don't know whether the tetralemma is a good translation or not. Maybe the native speakers can say. What I usually use the term in that place is 4 alternatives. So if there are four alternatives, for something has to be at least one of them. If there are only 4 ways that things can be, and if the thing doesn't belong to the first or third, second or third, then it has to be the 4. That is actually understanding about the 4 alternatives or tetralemma. So let me make that clear for you. When we study debate in Tibetan style, one very beautiful way to debate is to know the things. So to understand the things better, we usually study them in different categories. We break them up into different categories. And then another way to understand thing is to understand the thing from eliminating the other possibilities. For example, if there is 3 ways to get to Yeshe Norbu Center from your MRT, the nearest railway station, train subway station in Sweden, I'm talking about in Stockholm. If there is only 3 ways, 4 ways, for example, take here, since you raised the question about tetralemma. So if there is 4 ways to get to Yeshe Norbu Center from your nearest subway, so Anila, which route Anila took this evening, if we were to guess about it, if Zarina and we were to guess about it, we may say that she took the route 2nd, because there is only 4 routes available and she didn't took the 1st, 3rd and the last. So there's only 1 option left. So that is about understanding the object by eliminating all the other possibilities or all the other alternatives. So now we understood that, Anila, you took the B route because there's only 4 routes and you didn't took the other 3 routes. So there is only 1 possibility for you, right? So that is what we meant by tetralemma. Then a simple example will be, sometimes things can have 3 alternatives, sometimes things can have 4 alternatives. If I were to tell you between a human and a monk, for example, in my case, this is a very basic debate I want to present to all of you. If you have a monk on one side and a human on another, human is, of course, it covers more. So now if we have to find whether there is 3 alternatives or 4 alternatives. So the 4 alternatives are usually, there is someone who is a monk but not a human. there is someone who is a human but not a monk. There is someone who is both monk and human, but there is something which is neither human nor monk. Okay, so these are the four. But in the case of a monk and human, there's only three, because there is not a monk who is not a human, because monks has to be naturally comes under the category of human. So there's only three possibilities. So one possibility is there is a human which is not a monk, maybe Zarina. She is not a monk, but she is a human. There is a second category which is both human and monk. Take my example. Third one, there is something which is neither human nor monk. Take the example of this table. The table is neither human nor monk. So this is a way to study things, with breaking them into different alternatives, possibilities. And then when you eliminate the other possibilities, then you grasp at one thing, that you understood the thing from that side. So this is very often used in understanding emptiness by one of the important logics that Nagarjuna used. He says that things has to arise from something, right? Things has to arise from something. But for things to arise, there's only four possibilities. First thing is they have to arise from themselves. Second thing is they have to arise from a cause which is different from them. Second alternative. Third, they have to arise from a cause which is both self and different at the same time. Fourth, they have to arise without any cause. So these are the four alternatives that Nagarjuna count when it comes to understanding the things, the causes for the things. Then he said that the fourth one is not possible. If things do not have cause, then it's very difficult. Everything has a cause. So he rejects that. Then he rejects things cannot arise or happen from their own, because you as a person cannot exist from you, because you both are actually one entity. So when you say you exist from something, we are talking about two different entities, that one entity exists from another which precedes the earlier thing. So the cause and result has to be always do different things. So that's why he rejects the first thing. So then he says that it cannot exist from neither self and the others, and also others. So this way he rejects the other possibilities of the when it comes to arising of the things. And then ultimately he says they arise merely by designations. So that's what Anila, that's the way to debate that you find in debate books. Thank you, Anila, for that beautiful question.
Thank you for your answer. I will practice more of this in the future, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annie had a question?
Oh, yes, I had a question about the emotions, negative emotions, being not based on reality. And I've definitely noticed during the coronavirus these weeks that that I'm more aware of when I have a negative emotion response to the news, that I'm not actually getting the full picture, the reality of the situation of whatever it is that I'm seeing. And and I think that has been really important for my practice of emptiness, to be able to analyze what it is that caused the negative emotion to arise. On the other side, occasionally I've been able to comfort someone who's been extremely despondent and make them feel better about a very dire situation. And I wanted to know what the position is, I guess, of positive emotions within this understanding of emptiness.
Thank you, Annie, for the beautiful questions. And of course, when we speak about negative emotions, there is always the positive emotions. One way to understand the positive emotion in a very easy way is when your mind is absent of the negative emotions, of course, then whatever your thoughts may be more toward positive. The positive emotions, when we meditate on emptiness, when we are able to reduce the arising of the negative emotions, what it really helps is, because the positive emotions and negative emotions are something like two sides of what you call that weight scales, that when one goes up, the other always goes down, and when one goes up, when one end goes down, the other always goes up. It's something like that. So therefore, when the negative emotions arises in us, there is no room for the positive emotions to come in our mind. So therefore, when we meditate on emptiness, we actually reduced or eliminate the opportunity for negative emotions, which are based on unrealistic natures, to arise. So then we give opportunity for positive emotions to arise. One very important example of the positive emotions that can really gain its strength is the compassion. Because in the text written by Chandrakriti, the Entering the Middle Way philosophy, if you look at various Buddhist philosophical texts, in all the texts, it always starts with the supplications, the prostrations to Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, or some texts prostrations to Manjushri, and so on. But he went a step ahead of all other authors, and he supplicated to the great compassion. He didn't supplicate to Avalokiteshvara. He didn't supplicate to any other Buddhas or anything, but he offered his prayers and supplication to the great compassion. Because he see that great compassion is very much necessary at the time of before we started practicing. At the beginning stage also, we need compassions. And at the time of practice also, we need compassions. And at the end also, we need compassion. So that is something that we can take in our daily practice. Before you start off in the morning, and as I said before, to combine your practice in a very simple way, if you are a Buddhist, or if whether you may not be a Buddhist or anyway, it is always important to start your day with meditating on emptiness and compassion. So these two are not two unrelated things. It's not like when you meditate on emptiness, you get rid of, you do not meditate on compassion. It's not like that. What these two does actually is when you meditate on compassion, when you meditate on emptiness, it actually helps you to understand more about compassion. It actually helps our, compassionate qualities to grow inside. Okay, but on the other hand, the compassion itself is not much powerful to help understand the emptiness. But emptiness has that power that when you think about the emptiness nature of the sentient beings, the sufferings that you see, for all the problems that sentient beings go through, that people faces, and if you think that these are all not absolute existence but mere designations, it happens due to dependence nature, it happens due to cause and effects, so and so. If you look at from that perspective, it actually helps you to feel more compassionate towards those person. So understanding of emptiness actually helps grow the compassionate qualities within us. That's why we say that compassions, the great compassions, are of three types. The first one is a mere compassion. So mere compassion is you meditate on the sufferings of the numberless sentient beings and generate a very strong intention to liberate all sentient beings from sufferings, and that you are ready to, you're ready to do whatever it takes for you to do it in your own capacity, of course. So that is the very general compassion that we meditate. But then we say that if your compassionate thought is assisted by another thought, which is understanding of all the sentient beings as impermanent or emptiness. So the compassion itself is so powerful, and another positive thoughts that comes with the compassion assist and empower the growth of compassion to further. So that is the real compassion that the enlightened beings like Lord Buddha practice. And so what I wanted to say here is that many people have sometimes wrong understanding that to meditate on profound views like selfness, impermanence, or emptiness is not really practical. But if you meditate more on compassion, loving kindness, or equanimity and those things, it's more helpful to train your mind to make you a better person. I think it may be right in some extent, but if without the help of wisdom realizing emptiness, and if you merely practice compassion and loving kindness, you will only go to a certain level. Your meditative progress can go only to a certain level, but from beyond that, it won't progress. Because you need the push of the wisdom to push your growth further, to bring you further and further. So therefore, emptiness and the compassion always goes together. And I just took the example of positive thought compassion. The same is the case with loving kindness. The same is the case with generosity. The same is the case with perseverance. And it's the case with tolerance. For example, I think that when you understand emptiness about your opponents, someone you don't like, when you look at your opponents or enemies or someone that you hate, usually through emptiness, if you are able to meditate emptiness towards that person, tolerance, patience will automatically come. Patience will come running to you. You don't have to work hard to get it. So it tells us that understanding of emptiness really pushed or help you to attain or practice tolerance to that person. So it really assists the other qualities to get it about the positive thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. We have a question in the chat by Celeste. I have a question regarding 84,000 illusion ways to work during these times of pandemic and in normal life. How one can embrace the way to live both welcome the good and bad. We need a little clarification there.
I think it's okay. Maybe I do not understand it completely, but 84,000 ways. Usually when we say 84,000 texts of Lord Buddha, so the way we calculate, we count the 84,000. I think this is a little bit away from the questions. I just wanted to share this thing with all of you. In the different in the lower philosophical system, there are a few different ways to calculate 84,000. So the one thing is the 3 poisons of ignorance, attachment, and anger. Yeah. So 3 poisons, each one given 21,000. And Annie, maybe you're expert here since you were into that project. So 21,000 for each of the 3 poisons, which makes it 63,000. And then combine these three together, another 21,000, which brings to 84,000. So 84,000 in one way is to look at the negative emotions within us, which multiplies 84,000 times. And then it again goes back to number of breaths that we take, our inhale and exhale during a daytime. If you very critically break your breathing in and out process, count that breathing in and out process for the whole day, it says we breathe in out 84,000 times a day. That's coming from one of the schools. And that's why the 84,000 makes sense. This is just, what should I say, related to the topic. But of course, the present situation is of course very demanding and of course in some way very discouraging and very difficult situation. So But always we say that the Kadamba masters always say that even the afflicted emotions like the sufferings, for example, take the example of suffering or the pain that we have or the negative emotions that we have, they all have one positive quality. The positive quality that they have is we can get rid of them. So that is the one positive quality that they have, is if they are a part of our life, or if they cannot be detached from us, then of course is a big problem. Then there is nothing we can do about it. But though at this moment, at this situation, in these circumstances, in this world, it may sound really very emergency. It may sound really alarming, but in some way, if we look at from a larger point of our life, for example, in my case, if I live for 80 years, the problem that I face in my lifetime, the present crisis, is only 1 year. It's less than 1 year now. So the rest of the 79 years, which I have to live and I have lived already, are free of these problems. So when you look at from this perspective, it becomes a little bit smaller. So it's advantageous, temporary in that way. And like all the problems that we have in this world, there is a definite solution to it. There may be a global solution to it. There may be a community solution to it. But on a personal level, we can always stay calm and happy without being affected by all this. When I say without being affected, it doesn't mean that we have to neglect it. That's definitely not what I meant. We cannot neglect it. It's a part of our life. So as a social animal, as someone in this world, this problem is a part of our life too. But we can stay unaffected by the negative impacts of those problems and stay positive all the time through your training of your mind, how you look at that problems. So if you really look at that problem from a very narrow point of view, then the problem actually increases in our mind, and then we feel unhappy. So I think that the situation may be very bad and very critical, but still there is a way that on an individual level, we can stay very happy and compassionate through our own daily practice. So do we have some more, or is...
Thank you, Celeste. Any more questions?
Can I ask again?
Then Emilia, please do. Yes.
Rinpoche, this may be, I don't know, an obvious question. It's not to me. When one speaks about Buddha nature, and not only Buddha nature, I was listening the other day description on when we die, and on the channels that there are the 2 drops and so on, a white and red, and I, in all honesty, I have no idea. I don't know if drops and Buddha nature, are they empty of inherent nature?
Yeah, of course. Even when we say all phenomena are empty of inherent nature, the Buddha nature is also part of it. Okay. Sometimes we feel that in our mind, the enlightened being like Lord Buddha, we kept at such a high level that we feel that there may be a different situation. That's not the case. One best example is when we meditate on impermanence nature, when we meditate on dying and the death. One good example that we can look at is if we look at the past, people who have problems accepting death and fears generating out of thinking about death, the best way to calm down those fears is looking at the past things in this world. Since the human came into existence, there have been billions and billions of humans and other species. And then if we look at our times, the few centuries, the great personalities that came to this world, they all died. There's not a single person who stay back. So even the greatest master that we all revered as a Buddhist, the Lord Buddha, he himself also passed away when he attained 81 years old. So that's a part of human life. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that when we say that everything is empty of inherent existence and impermanent, everything means really everything, even Lord Buddha and the Buddha nature. So that's the one thing. And now when you say Buddha nature and the drops, they can be understood as the same thing. But Buddha nature is a very, what should I say, very Buddhist translation. Is a very Buddhist translation that you have the potential to become Buddha one day. But a very common way of more understandable translation will be your innate capacity to become enlightened, or your innate capacity to improve, your innate capacity to become a better person. So that is what we meant by Buddha nature. So Buddha nature is the English translation, but in Tibetan, we don't use the term Buddha. Tibetan, it says Rangshin Nerik. So Rangshin Nerik, Tibetan terms actually says that you have the innate potential to improve further, to become better and better. So what it really says is that if our human nature cannot change from one state to another, then there is no point in doing meditations or anything. Since at the very basic level, we have this capacity to change our nature. The mind, one beautiful thing about the mind is that it doesn't have a form, it doesn't have a shape or color. So therefore, it can be tamed and it can be improved in a meditative way, in a very good way. So that way, if we practice compassion and those things, we can tame our mind, we can change our mind, and that way it becomes progress further and further. And so there is no limit till which it can become better and better. The logic way to look at the improvements in the mental versus the physical things. If it is physical things, which is forms and colors like matters that we have, I usually take the example of the gigabytes that we have in the hard drives. Even though they may be very small particles, they still take space. So you say, oh, now you don't have any more space left. Since they are particle and matter, they take space. But our mental processes and thoughts, they do not have form or color or shape. So the beauty thing about our mind is that it doesn't take any space. So therefore, it has the potential to grow infinitely. It has the capacity to grow infinitely and understand everything. Because what you don't understand at one point of your life, by studying, by reading, by listening, you can understand it. So that says that if that process continues, then there is no end in your mind's capacity to learn new things. So this is all about Buddha nature, that our own nature has the capacity to grow further and further. So, but the two drops, I think this is a little bit Vajrayana's way of looking at how you attain the Buddhahood, but essentially they're all the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
We have a question in the chat by Ileana, who is asking about emptiness. Does it have a negative connotation from a Buddhist perspective? So then the clarification for a negative connotation is if it is considered bad that nothing exists.
Yeah, I think I made that clear, because when we say emptiness, we cannot take the literal understanding of the terms. I think we discussed this in our last session, that I took the example from the Heart Sutra, where we say there is no eye and no ears and no form. And so I said that many of the terminology, we may have to add an extra meaning, extra inscriptions to make it sound complete. So similarly, emptiness or no self doesn't actually means absence of self or empty of anything. It is actually speaking about a very special level of existence, as we discussed, the difference between mere existence and inherent existence. So I think if we understood that difference, then there is no negative connotation pertaining to understanding of that terminology. I think that's quite clear. Any more?
Thank you, Ileana, for your question. Any more questions from the audience? I see Robin is unmuting herself.
Yeah, maybe it's not possible to explain this in the few minutes that we have left, but could you say a little something about the emptiness of emptiness? Please.
Yes. I think when we say emptiness, now this is a little bit different, because emptiness is actually the quality of any object that we are trying to understand. Okay, so when we say last time in our class that two truths, the conventional truth and ultimate truth. Ultimate truth here is emptiness, are not two different things. For example, when you look at a thing, when you look at a flower, the mere appearance of the flower is the conventional truth of the flower. But the reality of that flower is much more deeper than its just mere appearance. So that is the ultimate truth. So just in one object, you can understand the two truths, the ultimate truth and the conventional truth. So similarly, any phenomenon that you take as an example, you could understand emptiness on that. So emptiness by itself is a quality that has to be explained based on a particular object. Okay, so that's why when we first understand emptiness, we have to understand emptiness on a person, or we have to understand emptiness on a phenomena which is different from person, like a pot, flower, mirage, or something like that. So therefore, emptiness as a quality doesn't have any different identity from any, for example, the emptiness of a pot and emptiness of a flower, they're same in the sense that the identity of emptiness is both same. The only difference is the basis of those two emptiness are different. In one case, it's a flower. In another case, it's a pot. So that's why emptiness cannot be understood in different categories based on its own nature, because it's just one unique nature which is similar to all, but it can be understood in different categories based on the object it is explained upon. For example, emptiness of a pot, emptiness of a flower, emptiness of a book, emptiness of a mala, like this, then you can understood the emptiness on numerous things. So that's why, since the things are numerous and incountable, we just count 18 emptiness, or 16 emptiness, or 2 emptiness. So when we count 16 emptiness, the first emptiness is emptiness of an external phenomena, emptiness of an internal phenomena. Then the third one is emptiness of emptiness, okay? So emptiness of external phenomena, we all know, it's a pot, house, mountains. And internal is the mind, thought processes. The third one, why it becomes very significant, very important to understand emptiness of the emptiness, is that people think that the emptiness of a pot is actually explaining about inherent absence of the inherent nature of a pot. So many misunderstood that it is actually describing the absence of the inherent nature in the pot. So they think that the pot is actually empty of inherent existence. But the emptiness of a pot may have an inherent existence. I think that you may get this point, because when we say the emptiness of a pot, we are actually describing the nature of pot here, right? So people misunderstood that when you say the emptiness of a pot, the pot is empty of inherent existence, but the emptiness, which is the quality of that pot, may have an inherent existence, may not be an absence of inherent existence, which is completely wrong. So that's why Buddha says that in the third, emptiness of emptiness, which by he means that even the emptiness itself is empty of its own inherent existence. This is a little bit difficult to understand, I'm sure. But here I wanted to bring you one special terminology that we use in debate, so that in future you all can study about it a little bit. We talk about negatives, double negatives. So double negatives in the sense, not being a flower by itself is a negative phenomenon, right? Non-flower, for example. Flower is a positive phenomena. Non-flower is a negative phenomena. So non-flower means the pot is a non-flower, right? And the sky is non-flower. So anything which is not flower is a non-flower. So, but when you say not being a non-flower, so then you add double negative here. First, non-flower itself is one negative. Then you add one more, not being a non-flower actually comes back to the flower, right? If you understood that clearly. Not being non-flower is actually telling us flower. So it's, if you have to look at an object, it's actually the flower itself. So absence of inherent existence is the emptiness, okay? So then absence of inherent existence is again emptiness itself. It doesn't bring you in inherent existence. So in the debate, we have one example. I don't know whether it makes sense to you. Anyway, I will set it here for your understanding that for example, Devadatta and Dharmadatta, they're two persons. Dharmadatta kills Devadatta, okay? So Dharmadatta kills Devadatta, but if you kill Dharmadatta, Devadatta won't come back, right? So Dharmadatta killed Devadatta, but if you kill Devadatta, Dharmadatta won't come back. Similarly, what it says is that absence of inherent existence doesn't give you back inherent existence. So therefore, the third one says emptiness of emptiness. That emptiness itself is also inherent of inherent existence. Thank you, Robinla, for these wonderful and difficult questions, and I hope my answers were not too confusing.
Thank you. A lot to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. There is one more question, which is the last one. We are running out of time. By Celeste. However, maybe Rinpoche, you have covered some before. Rinpoche, how can one practice Uma way of life and embrace uncertainty?
Which one? How can one practice Uma way of life and
embrace uncertainty?
Embrace. As I say, there is two ways to look at uncertainty. If you look at uncertainty from the perspective of uncertainty, then it makes us feel scared. It generates fear in us. But there is a very beautiful positive way to look at uncertainty, which is the middle way philosophers looking at uncertainty, which is that when we know that things are uncertain, for example, what we do in summer is that, I don't know in Sweden or in America, maybe you do same. Here in South India, when it monsoon, even though the morning it may be sun shining, when you go out, we bring an umbrella with us. When you go out, if you're going for a long walk for 2 hours or 3 hours, you bring an umbrella with you, even though the sky may be blue, because you never know when it may rain. So you accept the uncertainty from the beginning. You know, you have taken for granted that uncertainty is a part of your day. So suddenly if it rains, it doesn't make much difference to you. Maybe it causes a little bit inconvenience, but mentally you're prepared for it. That's why you brought the umbrella. So similarly, when we are born with a lot of uncertainties. That's why in understanding impermanence and uncertainty, we have to know that there are many different levels of uncertainties, gross level of uncertainties and impermanence. and a very subtle level of uncertainties. Some part of, or some levels of uncertainties and impermanence are a part of our life from the day one, as I said before, that every minute we are changing. Every minute there is some changes happening to you. And in debate, we said that in future, there is no actual order, which comes first and which comes next in future, because no one has seen the future. We're all predicting future. When we started to plan our life, we are all actually based on some predictions. You own, maybe based on the societies, maybe based on the country's policy, based on your parents' expectations, based on your own wish. A lot of hypocrisy and a lot of unrealistic thoughts combined together to make our future, to plan future. But no one has seen the future. Even Buddha haven't seen the future. So that's why we say that in future, there is no order. Order in the sense that this will come first and this will come later. There is no such order in the future. Therefore, it's the beauty of future, I think, that uncertainty can be taken as in a very positive way. If everything is certain that you will die first, I will die later, if that is certain, I think that will be very, very boring. That will be very boring. If you know for sure that you're going to die tomorrow, that will be very boring. So I think I will always wanted to live with this uncertainty. So therefore, there are many ways to embrace the beauty of uncertainty in our life. And as we say, coincidence, just take the uncertainty as a coincidence. It just happens for a reason. And from a Buddhist point of view, in reality, there is no such thing as uncertainties. Everything happens for a reason. Everything, there is a cause for that, though we may not see it. So I think, so if we look at those things from this perspective, so though the things are there in the same way, but the way you change your own understanding and your own looking at that nature and the environment or the situation, it changes how it impacts your life, how it impacts your own feelings and your own mind. So that's, I think, very important to look at that in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Rinpoche. We don't have more questions.
Okay, thank you. So shall we conclude here, Zarinala?
Yes, Rinpoche. But is it possible first to just thought to I'll switch the camera. Rinpoche, thank you so much for the teachings during these uncertain times and also during the Sakadava month. So we offer you a kata and also this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hours, Rinpoche, on behalf of Yeshe Norbu, on behalf of every one of us. We wish you very long and healthy, stable lives so that we can gather like this, listen to the teachings, listen to the advice, and ask questions and progress on our path to enlightenment. So thank you so much, Rinpoche, for your precious time and the teachings. So we are looking forward to more teachings whenever you are available about emptiness and about numbering.
Thank you so much, everyone. And it has really been a very positive time for me to share some thoughts with all of you. And I hope that it may benefit you in some way. And so I wish you all the best and stay safe, stay healthy. And I hope to see you again someday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, Rinpoche.